My mother-in-law orchestrated a scheme to frame me, first with fake cheating photos, then by planting stolen jewelry on me. The ultimate shock came when I got pregnant and she texted, "Now I'll take what's growing inside you." She always believed I wasn't good enough for her son. At my own birthday dinner, she branded me a gold digger, even after I paid for her meal. She twisted a past argument about my engagement ring's price, claiming I threw a tantrum because it was too expensive. She then used this fabricated story, along with replacing my work clothes with cheap knockoffs, as proof I was only after my husband's money. But when her son's love for me remained unshaken, a chilling look entered her eyes. The following week, I noticed the same car tailing me everywhere: my office, the gym, the grocery store. My husband brushed off my concerns as paranoia. Then, one day, I found a manila folder on my coffee table. It contained private investigator reports, meticulously detailing 3 months of my life. Every conversation, every place I went, was twisted to appear suspicious. The pie claimed a male coworker buying me coffee was evidence of an affair. My bank visits were cited as proof of hidden accounts. She had actually asked me to find these reports. The jewelry incident unfolded during Easter dinner. My mother-in-law shrieked that her grandmother's bracelet was missing. As I helped clear the table, she made a big show of searching, then dramatically suggested we check our purses. Of course, the bracelet was found in mine. I saw my husband's face fall, and that flicker of doubt shattered something inside me. My mother-in-law, feigning generosity, announced she wouldn't press charges, claiming we all make mistakes, while the family stared at me like I was garbage. 2 weeks later, she invited me to lunch. I hoped for an apology, but instead, she slid a check across the table. $50,000. When I didn't react, she wrote another $75,000 then. $100,000. Every woman has a price, she sneered. Name yours. She boasted about having successfully done this before, adding I wasn't even the most attractive gold digger her son had dated. The final breaking point apparently happened during a family meal in September. My mother-in-law had been unusually sweet for 2 weeks, a red flag I missed. She suggested we share photos from our recent family beach trip. She connected her phone to the TV. The first few images were normal. Then suddenly, there I was, kissing another man. There were multiple photos of me with this stranger at restaurants and places I'd never been. The lighting was off, and the metadata would have exposed them as fakes, but no one noticed as they gawked at the images on the big screen. She launched into a dramatic speech about protecting her son and following her maternal instincts. Turned out she'd already shown these doctored photos to my husband's coworkers and acquaintances, claiming she was shielding him from his adulterous wife. I tried to defend myself, but she had perfectly primed everyone. The walk to my car with my family whispering behind me was the longest of my life. My husband asked for space to think on the drive home. That's when I knew this was her plan. All along, she would never stop. Destroying me was simply part of who she was. Sitting in my car, watching him walk into our house without me, I made a decision. She wanted to play with family secrets, we'd play. I hired my own investigator to dig into her past. It took him 2 months to uncover a bombshell. Her husband's nephew bore no resemblance to his claimed father, but he had her distinctive nose and green eyes. The timeline was crucial. She'd supposedly given birth to her first child 6 months early, but the cousin was 6 months older. The affair that led to his birth occurred when her husband was away on a business trip. For months, I played the defeated daughter-in-law. I apologized for the misunderstanding over the photos. I thanked her for accepting me back into the family. Then, over Thanksgiving, I suggested a fun family activity for Christmas. Those popular ancestry DNA tests. Wouldn't it be amazing to trace our family bloodline? I appealed directly to her ego, emphasizing the importance of family legacy. She couldn't refuse without looking suspicious. On Christmas morning, I handed out beautifully wrapped 23andMe kits to everyone. I saw the panic in her eyes beneath her forced smile. The next 2 months were incredible. The family group chat exploded with excitement as results came in. Everyone shared their ancestry percentages, and found distant relatives. Then the bomb dropped. The cousin's results showed a half-sibling match with my husband. My father-in-law stared at the TV, unable to process what he was seeing. The rest of the family compared results, confirming the match. The math was undeniable. My mother-in-law tried to claim the test was wrong, but science doesn't lie like she does. Watching her perfect family image crumble as she desperately tried to explain was poetic justice. Her husband moved out within a week. The divorce papers cited infidelity and fraud. The family fractured, with the majority cutting her off for her decades of hypocrisy. My husband often apologized for ever doubting me. Family gatherings moved to our home where she was not invited. I thought I had one, but my birth control failed despite my precautions. The positive pregnancy test arrived at my office with roses. The card read, "Congratulations, grandmother knows." An untraceable text followed. "You took my family. I'll take what grows inside you and raise it properly."
Oh.
Blood is blood. She'd been playing a much longer game than I ever imagined. My hands trembled as I stared at the card. The office suddenly felt too small, too vulnerable. My coworker Natalie saw my face and rushed over, but I waved her away, grabbing my purse. I needed to go home. The drive became a blur of checking mirrors and making random turns. Every car behind me could be hers. At home, I double-locked the door and drew all the curtains. My husband found me on the bathroom floor 20 minutes later, the pregnancy test still clutched in my hand. He knelt beside me, and I showed him the text. His face cycled through emotions before settling on pure fury. He called his mother immediately, but she didn't answer. Then his phone buzzed with a message from her. "Congratulations on the baby. I can't wait to be involved every step of the journey." That night, we changed the locks and installed a security system. My husband took time off work to be with me. We altered our routines, avoiding predictable patterns, but she remained one step ahead. Baby items started arriving at our house with no return address. A crib, a high chair, all high quality and impossible to trace. The psychological warfare rapidly escalated. She somehow got my work email and sent congrats to the entire office announcing my pregnancy before I'd even seen a doctor. My supervisor pulled me aside to discuss maternity leave while I was still processing everything. She had stolen my chance to share the news on my own terms. Then came medical interference. I arrived at my first prenatal checkup to find she had already called pretending to be me, trying to get my medical information. When I checked in, the receptionist looked confused, saying I had just called to cancel. We spent an hour validating my identity and adding password protection to my information. My husband confronted her at her apartment. I sat in the car, watching through the window as they argued. She stood there smiling, denying everything. When he returned, his hands were shaking. She'd decorated a full nursery in her spare room. Already chosen names and informed him she'd been consulting with lawyers about grandparent rights. The family was divided on how to handle her. Some relatives thought we were overreacting to a grandmother's excitement. Others had seen her ruin enough lives to know better. My father-in-law, still reeling from the divorce, offered to help in any way he could. Uncovered years of hidden credit cards and accounts she had. Resources we never expected. Week after week, her tactics grew bolder. She showed up at my workplace with baby gifts, pressuring me to accept them in front of coworkers or appear ungrateful. She joined every pregnant group and forum I created, constantly commenting directly after me. When I switched groups, she found those too. The breaking point occurred during my second trimester. I'd been careful, cautious, but somehow she found out about my doctor's visit. She walked into the waiting area and sat next to me. I just smiled and picked up a parenting magazine. When they called my name, she stood up too. The nurse looked puzzled. As we approached, my mother-in-law sweetly explained she was there to support her daughter-in-law. I clearly told them she was not allowed in my appointment. She threw a spectacular tantrum about being excluded from her grandchild's life, audible throughout the waiting area. Security had to escort her out as she wailed about wanting to be involved. That night, my husband and I formed a plan. She chose to escalate, we'd be ready. We began documenting everything, every communication, unwanted gift, and appearance. We installed cameras throughout our property, updated all our passwords, and placed alerts on our credit reports. But she adapted too. Gifts started arriving. At my husband's job instead, she befriended our neighbors, often asking about me and feigning concern for my health. She volunteered at the hospital, where I planned to deliver. She even got on the auxiliary board. She countered every move we made. My sister-in-law, Natalie, proved to be an unexpected ally. She had spent years watching her mother operate and knew her tendencies. She warned us about the next phase. My mother-in-law would try to isolate me from my support system. Sure enough, anonymous notes began arriving at my acquaintances' houses, warning them of my mental instability during pregnancy. Most friends saw through it, but some drifted away. My book group suddenly had scheduling conflicts whenever I was free. I often wondered what drove this woman to invest so much time and money into this. Private investigator, the fake photos, the baby items, that's a lot of effort. Just because she dislikes her daughter-in-law. My yoga instructor mentioned someone had called to express concern about my exercising while pregnant. She was slowly shrinking my world until only she remained. Stress began to impact my health. My doctor noted my blood pressure was high. I couldn't sleep and jumped at every sound. My husband added motion sensors and more cameras. But technology couldn't stop psychological warfare. She was too smart to do anything that could be legally construed as harassment. Then, by chance, we uncovered her latest plot. Daniel, my husband's cousin and her secret son, was horrified after learning the truth about his parentage. He reached out, hoping to help. He'd overheard her on the phone discussing nursing homes and power of attorney. She was researching how to declare me incompetent due to pregnancy-related mental health issues. The knowledge of her competency plot sent a chill down my spine. I immediately made an appointment with my obstetrician to document my mental health state. My husband joined me at every appointment, establishing a record of my stability and sound decision-making. The doctor noted everything in my file, understanding the gravity of the situation. After I outlined the pattern of harassment, Daniel proved invaluable. In the following weeks, he started visiting his mother regularly, pretending to reconcile. While gathering intelligence, we learned from him that she had been speaking with a psychiatrist friend about postpartum psychosis symptoms, intending to use this angle after the birth. She'd even researched which courts in our area were most sympathetic to grandparent rights issues. My husband's work schedule became unpredictable as he tried to balance protecting me and preserving our finances. His mother started showing up at his office during critical meetings, forcing him to choose between his job and dealing with her interruptions. His supervisor, initially tolerant, grew impatient with the constant disruptions. The financial burden exacerbated an already stressful situation. Natalie suggested we go on the offense instead of just defending. She'd been chronicling her mother's actions for years, including details of manipulation tactics used on other family members. We collaborated to build a detailed file documenting a decade-long history of harassment. Former girlfriends my husband had lost contact with suddenly made sense. They'd all been driven away by similar campaigns. The 20th week of my pregnancy brought a new development. I woke to find our mailbox overflowing with pamphlets from adoption agencies. The message was clear. She wanted me to question my ability to be a mother. My husband installed a lockable mailbox that same day, but the psychological damage was done. Every normal pregnancy anxiety became magnified as I wondered if she was right about my parenting skills. Our neighbors became unwitting pawns in her scheme. She'd befriended the elderly couple next door, bringing them groceries and checking in daily. They thought she was wonderful, unaware she was pumping them for information about our routines. When packages arrived, she'd intercept them, claiming to be helpful, always knowing exactly what we'd ordered and when. My work performance declined. As I struggled to focus, projects that would normally take hours stretched into days as I constantly checked surveillance footage on my phone. My supervisor expressed concern, which further fueled my mother-in-law's narrative about my declining mental health. I forced myself to compartmentalize, refusing to give her fodder for her competency allegations. Daniel learned her next move from a carelessly open laptop. She had been communicating with a family law attorney about creating a paper trail for future custody disputes. Every gift she had sent, every attempt to get involved, was being documented as proof of her dedication to the baby's well-being. Our resistance to acknowledge her involvement was being twisted into paranoid behavior on our part. The baby shower became a battleground. My friends organized a small gathering, trying to create a normal moment amidst the chaos. She somehow found out the location and time. She didn't disrupt the party directly. That would have been too obvious. Instead, an exquisite gift basket arrived during the gift opening ceremony, containing far more expensive items than anything my friends had contributed. The card read, "With love from Grandma," in her unmistakable handwriting. My husband began to sleep poorly, resulting in persistent dark circles under his eyes. He put an app on his phone connected to all our security cameras and checked it obsessively. All night, our connection frayed under the constant scrutiny. Date nights turned into strategy sessions. Security alerts interrupted romantic moments. She was slowly killing our marriage without ever physically touching either of us. Natalie warned us that the holiday season was approaching. Her mother always escalated during family gatherings, relying on tradition and witnesses to coerce compliance. Thanksgiving loomed like a thundercloud. Family members who had remained neutral began reaching out, urging us to consider reconciliation for the baby's sake. I formed a support group of other women who had faced similar nasty in-laws. Their stories offered both comfort and horror. Some had eventually reached an agreement, while others had been fighting for years. They taught me documentation procedures and legal protections I had no idea existed. One woman described how her mother-in-law gained partial custody by presenting herself as a stable alternative to a neurotic mother. During his reconnaissance visits, my husband's cousin divulged even more troubling information. His mother had been attending grandparent support groups, portraying herself as a victim of an ungrateful daughter-in-law who was preventing her from seeing her grandchild. She had built a network of sympathetic allies, unaware of her true character. Some even offered to serve as character witnesses if she took legal action. Stress manifested physically as my pregnancy progressed. Headaches became constant companions. When I did get any sleep, it was plagued by nightmares of her snatching my baby. My doctor prescribed mild anxiety medication safe for pregnancy, which I knew she would use against me if she found out. Every medical decision was weighed against potential legal repercussions. We discovered she'd been volunteering in the hospital's maternity unit for months, ingratiating herself with the nurses. She had grown particularly close to one nurse who worked in the birth unit, sharing anecdotes about her difficult daughter-in-law who was keeping her from her grandchild. The thought that she might have allies there at my most vulnerable time sent me into a panic attack that took hours to subside. My husband confronted his extended family, explaining the full extent of her harassment. Some family members now recognized the gravity of the situation, while others still believed we were overreacting. The family divide deepened as holiday plans became a quagmire of negotiations and bruised feelings. She played the victim brilliantly, a grandmother who only wanted to adore her grandchild. Financial strain intensified as security measures drained our funds. The nursery we envisioned became a fortress, with window locks and camera angles taking precedence over decor. Every dollar spent on protection was money not set aside for our child's future. She had found a way to rob our child before they were even born. Daniel's intelligence gathering revealed her most diabolical strategy yet. She had been researching childcare courses and qualifications, compiling a resume that would make her appear to be the more qualified caregiver. She even started working part-time at a daycare center to gain professional childcare experience. Every move was calculated to put her in the best possible position if custody was ever challenged. My body changed as the pregnancy progressed, but I couldn't appreciate the miracle of creation. Each kick reminded me of what she intended to steal. Shopping for infant clothes became a reconnaissance mission, scanning parking lots for her car and avoiding predictable stores. The joy of preparing for our baby was overshadowed by constant hypervigilance. Work became my main escape, but even that was threatened. She started sending flowers to my office weekly, signed "Your beloved mother-in-law." Colleagues thought it was sweet, unaware of the psychological toll each bouquet represented. I couldn't refuse them without appearing ungrateful. Couldn't explain without appearing paranoid. The 7th month brought a horrifying escalation. I was home alone when the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw a woman I didn't recognize holding official-looking documents. She identified herself as a social worker responding to a call. About an at-risk pregnancy, someone had reported I was in extreme mental distress and might endanger my unborn child. My hands shook as I dialed my husband, who raced home from work. The social worker was professional, yet thorough, checking our home and asking about my mental health history. She found nothing amiss, but the visit became part of an official record. My mother-in-law had found a way to involve authorities without explicitly implicating herself. Natalie used her connections to help us track down the complaint. It had been made anonymously through a tip line, making it impossible to trace who had called. The social worker's report exonerated us, but the investigation remained in the system. With this precedent set, any future complaints would be taken more seriously. She had laid the groundwork for future attacks while maintaining plausible deniability. Social workers at the door, checking on your mental health. Your mother-in-law is playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers. But using child services? As pawns seemed a new low, even for her playbook. My husband's relationship with his mother reached a breaking point. He drove to her apartment one evening and returned hours later, emotionally exhausted. She'd spent the entire time playing the victim, wailing about missing her grandchild's development and showing him the nursery she'd set up. She'd even bought a car seat for her vehicle in case of an emergency. Her delusion was so strong that she seemed to genuinely believe she was the wronged party. Sleep deprivation worsened as my due date approached. Every night I'd wake up multiple times to check the locks and cameras. My husband started sleeping in shifts, one of us always on watch. The nursery remained half-finished because we prioritized security over aesthetics. What should have been a time of joyful anticipation turned into a siege mentality. She found ways around every barrier we put up. We blocked her calls, so she used burner phones. When our routines changed, she adjusted her surveillance. Infiltrate even the places we thought were safe. Her resources seemed limitless, her determination absolute. Fighting her was like battling smoke. She would vanish only to reappear somewhere else. The baby shower gifts she sent haunted our house. Couldn't use them, knowing they were manipulative, but donating them felt like accepting defeat. They sat in our garage, expensive reminders of her presence. Each trendy outfit and high-end toy represented another attempt to establish her claim on our child. My already stretched support system began to crack. Friends grew tired of the turmoil, unable to understand why we couldn't just work things out with her. Family members who had initially backed us began suggesting compromises. The isolation she had planned was working. Even those who believed us grew weary of the perpetual crisis mode. Daniel informed us that she was intensifying her legal preparations. She hired a well-known family law attorney specializing in aggressive grandparent rights litigation. Her volunteer efforts, character witnesses, and documented gift-giving had built a strong case for a loving grandma who was being denied access. Our defensive actions were being spun as proof of our fragility. The 36th week of pregnancy brought fresh anxieties. Labor was coming, and despite our efforts, she had established herself at the hospital. We discovered she had been delivering treats to the maternity unit staff weekly, becoming a cherished fixture. The caregivers spoke affectionately of the sweet grandma who only wanted to be part of her grandchild's life. My husband met with hospital security to discuss the situation and provide evidence of the harassment. They promised to limit her access during delivery. But their sympathies were clearly with the tearful grandma who had shown them baby pictures and recounted her grief. We realized we couldn't rely on institutional protection after she'd spent months building ties there. Natalie proposed an extreme measure: deliver at a different hospital. We researched facilities in nearby towns, hoping to find one where she didn't have connections. The logistics were difficult, increasing the distance from our support system, but it seemed our only chance for a peaceful birth. Oh, my mother-in-law must have sensed our plans. The gifts became more frequent, arriving daily now. She provided contact information for a professional photographer, having already scheduled and paid for newborn shots. A fancy stroller appeared on our porch. Each gift came with cards expressing her love and excitement, building evidence of A kind grandma being rejected by ungrateful parents. At 37 weeks, stress triggered false labor. Worried she knew we were there. The contractions subsided after monitoring, but the episode left us shaken. How could we handle actual labor while remaining hypervigilant against her interference? Our marriage counselor, one of the few professionals who understood the situation, helped us develop a birth plan that included security precautions. We created code words, backup plans, and contingencies for various scenarios. What was supposed to be a conversation about pain management and birthing positions turned into a strategic defense planning session. Daniel's final intelligence report, before my due date, was the most alarming yet. His mother had been meeting with other estranged grandparents to learn about their successes and failures in seeking access. She'd studied case law and knew exactly what evidence courts considered compelling. Her preparation was meticulous, viewing our child as a trophy to be obtained through legal maneuvers. The nursery camera alerted us to movement one night. Husband watched the feed and saw a package on the windowsill, placed there without triggering our property's motion sensors. Inside was a hand-knitted blanket and a note, made with love for my grandchild. Soon, the underlying menace in that one word soon kept me awake until morning. My due date passed and the waiting grew excruciating. Every twinge could signal the onset of labor, putting our carefully laid preparations to the test. She seemed to know we were close. Her social media messages became more frequent, discussing the anticipation of becoming a grandma and eliciting sympathy from friends unaware of the real story. My husband took full family leave, refusing to leave me alone as we neared the end. His determination moved me, but I could see the strain in his tired eyes and rigid shoulders. She'd managed to steal even these precious last moments of pregnancy, transforming what should have been exciting preparation into terrifying vigilance. The 39th week brought a surprise ally. A nurse at our chosen hospital recognized my mother-in-law's photograph from our security briefing. She had previously worked at another hospital where my mother-in-law had volunteered and had witnessed similar behavior in another family. Her validation felt like a lifeline. Finally, someone in authority recognized the pattern. Labor began at dawn on a Tuesday, 3 days after my due date. As contractions intensified, my husband executed our plan. He exclusively called our most trusted allies using the code phrases we had developed. We took a convoluted path to the hospital, checking for followers. Even in labor, I couldn't stop scanning for potential threats. Hospital security had our photos and protocols ready. They stationed someone near the maternity ward entrance and gave strict instructions. We'd registered using aliases to keep our true names off public records. Every safeguard we could think of was in place, but would it be enough? Between contractions, I watched my husband coordinating our defense, checked doors, verified employee identities, and communicated with our security network. What should have been his time to emotionally support me was spent defending against his mother's intrusion, but she had also stolen from us the normal birth experience we deserved. As transition approached and the pain worsened, my focus shifted to the immediate task of safely bringing our child into this world. The months of tension, fear, and hypervigilance melted in comparison to the primal urgency of labor. But even in those intense moments, a part of me remained vigilant, waiting for her to appear. Our daughter was delivered at 11:47 p.m. perfectly, healthy despite the stress of the pregnancy. As I held her for the first time, tears streamed down my cheeks. I felt overwhelmed with love and fierce protectiveness. She was here, she was ours, and I would do anything to shield her from the woman who wished to take her. My husband's expression as he greeted his daughter cut through months of strain. For a while, we were just new parents, amazed at the tiny life we had created. But reality struck swiftly as he checked his phone to ensure our security network was still operational. Even at our most beautiful moment, she cast a shadow. The nurse who recognized my mother-in-law from another hospital went above and beyond her shift to protect us. She kept our names off public notice boards personally, checked every visitor, and formed a safety zone around our small family. Her kindness and understanding of our predicament meant more than she knew. Recovery was a blur of feeding schedules and security screenings. We chose not to release any announcements or photos, maintaining a strict information blackout. Family. Members who had proven trustworthy were granted brief visits under strict guidelines. The usual joy of welcoming a new baby became a covert operation. On the second night, hospital security stopped my mother-in-law in the parking garage. She'd been circling the hospital for hours, apparently sensing our presence despite our precautions. They escorted her off the property, warning her about trespassing, but we knew she'd only get more inventive. The next morning brought a new challenge. My mother-in-law had identified our room and left a gift basket outside our door. The nurses found it during their rounds and brought it in, believing it was from family. Inside were expensive baby clothes and a card professing her affection for her grandchild. My husband quickly reported it to security, but the damage was done. She knew where we were. We decided to leave the hospital early. The doctor cleared us after determining both the baby and I were healthy enough. My husband directed the car to a secondary exit, while security created a distraction at the main entrance. We tucked our child into her car seat and slipped away unnoticed, feeling like fugitives from our own home. At home, we found more evidence of her presence. Fresh flowers on our porch, a package from a high-end baby store. Our security cameras showed she arrived at 3 a.m., carefully avoiding the motion sensors she had obviously pre-mapped. The invasion of our space while we were at our most vulnerable felt deliberate and vicious. Her timing at the parking garage, while we were still in the hospital, seemed too convenient. How did she find out we were there? Despite the fake names and security procedures, Daniel called with vital news. His mother had been meeting with a family court mediator, presenting herself as a caring grandmother, trying to establish contact with her grandchild. She had brought photos of the nursery she had planned, receipts for all the gifts we had declined, and character references from her grandparent support group. The mediator seemed sympathetic to her cause. My husband took swift action. He compiled all our evidence into one comprehensive dossier, the pattern of harassment. Security footage, threatening texts, and witness statements from hospital staff who had observed her behavior. We wanted to be prepared in case she pursued legal action, though we hoped to avoid that nightmare. The first week at home with our daughter should have been wonderful. Instead, we lived in constant readiness. Every knock on the door sent my heart racing. When neighbors came over to congratulate us, I scanned for clues that they had been speaking with her. The baby monitor became another security camera to obsess over. Natalie arrived with alarming intelligence. Her mother was spotted outside our pediatrician's office, presumably trying to figure out where we'd be taking the baby for checkups. She'd also been begging family members for photos of the infant, playing the victim of being cut off from her granddaughter's life. Some relatives began to crumble under her influence. We quickly changed pediatricians, heading to 1-3 towns away. The extra distance was exhausting with a newborn, but necessary. We enrolled using privacy protocols and explained the situation to the staff. They were understanding, but they clearly thought we were overreacting to family drama. If only they knew the full scope. My mother-in-law upped her psychological warfare. She created a social media page called Grandmother's Love Denied and posted poetry about missing her grandchild. She never mentioned our names, but family members knew exactly who she meant. Strangers expressed pity in the comments, unaware of her true nature. My husband reported the page, but she had been careful not to post anything that violated the terms of service. Sleep deprivation made things harder. Between feeding times and security concerns, neither of us got more than 2 hours at a time. My husband's paternity leave was running short, and I was terrified of being alone with the baby. Not because I couldn't handle parenting, but because I'd be exposed to whatever she had planned next. We hired a security consultant with expertise. In stalking situations, he inspected our procedures and suggested enhancements like a panic button system and increased video coverage. The cost was exorbitant, but my father-in-law secretly contributed, feeling guilty about the monster he had inadvertently enabled for decades. During those difficult times, his encouragement was invaluable. The consultant also advised us to frequently change our routines, never leave at the same time, take different routes, and shop at random stores. Living like this was hard, but it was effective. We didn't see her for 3 weeks. I started to hope she had given up. That hope was crushed when Daniel uncovered her new plan. She had been building a case that we were isolating the baby from extended family, creating an unhealthy environment. She documented every family gathering we'd missed, every invitation we'd turned down. In her narrative, we were the ones harming the child by denying her a relationship with caring relatives. My husband's job suffered due to his distractions and frequent absences. His mother had damaged several business relationships by calling his coworkers and expressing concern about his mental health since becoming a father. His manager approached him for a chat about work-life balance, apparently influenced by what she had told them. We decided to go on the offensive. My husband met with each family member individually and showed them our documented evidence. Some were stunned by the proof. Others remained convinced we were overreacting. The DNA revelation further exacerbated the family schism, forcing everyone to choose sides. During one of these visits, an aunt shared something crucial. My mother-in-law had done this to my husband's father's sister decades earlier. She had been ostracized from the family because my mother-in-law told everyone she was unstable. The aunt had relocated across the country and cut off all contact. We tracked her down and heard her story, which eerily mirrored our own. Felt more validated after understanding this pattern of behavior. We weren't crazy or overreacting. This was her predetermined method of eliminating threats to her control. The aunt provided written testimony about her experience, adding to our growing collection of evidence. But my mother-in-law must have sensed the tide turning. Her tactics became increasingly desperate. She showed up at my husband's workplace with a lawyer, seeking to discuss grandmother rights. Security removed them, but not before numerous coworkers witnessed the incident. She had succeeded in making our private misery public. We faced a difficult decision. We would relocate not just to another neighborhood, but out of state. My husband began job searching in cities where we had no connections, and she would be unable to follow. It meant leaving our support system, but staying had become intolerable. Natalie helped us organize the relocation in secret, used her address for job applications, conducted interviews via video chat, and made plans through encrypted communication. It was extreme, but given her resourcefulness, any precaution seemed justified. My husband got a job offer 8 hours away. The position was actually better than his current one, with understanding bosses who valued his candor about his family's circumstances. We began to arrange our departure like a military operation. Couldn't use typical movers as they might be questioned or bribed. Instead, friends helped us pack in the middle of the night, filling a rental truck in shifts. We left furniture behind rather than risking an extended moving period. Our daughter slept through everything, blissfully unaware of the disruption her presence had caused. The hardest part was leaving without saying goodbye to supportive family members. Any information could potentially reach my mother-in-law through the family grapevine. We left letters for Natalie to distribute once we were gone, explaining our decision and promising to reconnect when we were settled and safe. On our last night, I walked around our empty house, holding our daughter in my arms. This wasn't how I had envisioned starting our family life. But as I looked at her serene face, I knew we were making the right choice. She deserved to grow up in an environment free of manipulation and psychological warfare. We departed at 3 a.m. on a Wednesday, taking a roundabout route that added hours to our trip. My husband constantly checked the mirrors while I soothed our daughter in the back seat. Every car that trailed us for more than a few exits sent our hearts racing. But mile by mile, the tension began to ease. Daniel called when we were almost halfway to our destination. His mother had discovered we had left and was in full meltdown mode. She had called the police, claiming we had kidnapped her grandchild, but they had immediately dismissed her because she couldn't prove any custodial rights. She had driven to our empty house and stood in the driveway yelling until neighbors called the cops. We arrived in our new city, exhausted yet eager. The rental house was small, but it had enough security features. We chose it because of the gated yard and its distance from major traffic. As we carried our daughter across the threshold, I felt a sensation I hadn't had in months. Peace. The first few weeks were chaotic as everyone adjusted, new doctors, new routines, new everything. But without the constant threat of her presence, we could finally enjoy our baby. I watched as my husband slowly relaxed, The tightness in his shoulders dissipated as days passed without incident. We maintained strict information security, no social media or public records updates. All communication was done through lawyers and encrypted methods. Natalie served as our communication hub for safe family members. We heard from her that my mother-in-law had hired a private investigator to find us, but we had thoroughly covered our tracks. 3 months into our new life, I felt comfortable enough to join a local mothers group. Now, using only my first name, I started building a new support network. The other mothers knew nothing about our past. The familiarity of seeing just another family adjusting to parenthood was comforting. My husband thrived in his new position. He could now focus on his job without having to deal with constant crises. His confidence returned as he built new professional relationships free from his mother's poison. Watching him become the father he'd always wanted to be, free of her shadow, made me incredibly happy. Our daughter grew up in a loving and stable environment. She learned to smile, giggle, and crawl in a family where tension wasn't constant. Each milestone felt like a victory, not just for her development, but for our escape from the toxic environment that threatened to define her early life. Natalie returned after 6 months, conducting rigorous counter-surveillance to ensure she wasn't followed. She informed me that my mother-in-law's behavior had worsened to the point where even her most ardent supporters were withdrawing. Without us as targets, her instability became impossible to conceal. Several family members had contacted Natalie to apologize for not believing us sooner. The legal threats never materialized into actual court action. Without knowing where we were, she couldn't file anything significant. Her lawyer evidently dropped her after realizing the severity of her harassment. Talk about playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers. Hiring a security consultant for family turmoil is a higher level of problem solving. However, calling it family drama is like calling a hurricane. Mildly breezy weather. She had alienated the grandparent support groups by becoming too extreme for them. As our daughter's first birthday approached, I reflected on her journey. We'd lost our house, our town, and the proximity of dear family members. Gained something infinitely precious: freedom from a woman who would have ruined our daughter's childhood through manipulation and control. We celebrated quietly, just the 3 of us. A tiny cake, a few presents, and the gift of calm normalcy. As I watched our child smash icing into her hair, giggling with delight, I knew every sacrifice had been worthwhile. She would grow up knowing only true affection. We had survived the psychological warfare that had nearly destroyed us. My husband and I had emerged stronger from the fire of shared adversity. We'd learned to trust our instincts, protect our family, and prioritize peace over exposure to toxicity. Our daughter would eventually learn her story, but for now, all she knew was protection and love. The future stretched before us, full of possibilities, unburdened by her grandmother's shadow. We'd start new traditions, make new memories, and raise our daughter to be confident and secure. The cost of independence had been steep, but the tranquility we had found was invaluable. Our small family had won by choosing distance over devastation and obscurity over constant fear. In our new lives, we were just another young family in a peaceful neighborhood. It's no drama, no stalking, no psychological warfare. Just the beautiful, challenging routine of raising a child in peace.